I'm Marcus Cronauer. Tonight on Still at Large, we dive deep into the disappearance of Dex Cobbler. Once considered one of the best horse breeders in Texas, Cobbler was brought under investigation in 1979 after allegations of drug trafficking through his thriving business were brought to light. Charges included conspiracy, money laundering, and drug trafficking across state lines. We sent Still at Large's very own Johnny St. Clair to investigate what exactly happened all those years ago.
Dex Cobbler was born in the small town of Wills Point, Texas. He managed to garner a great deal of money due to his success in horse breeding. He lived like most Southern men of wealth in his day, spending most of his free time at his beloved home, Cobbler Ranch. Jacob Cartwright, a longtime friend of Cobbler's, helped to shed light on his early years in the small town.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that guy was a good boss spec around town. It's something you could depend on to get the best horse in the state.
Though over the course of the late 70s, Cobbler's luck began to turn.
We got struggled through that time. I had to sell most of my land, just keep lights on. I only had what I like for Dex to have all that land horses. Make all of this how much is five another way for people.
The market for horses began to plummet. Cobbler needed to think fast if he wanted to save his ranch.
There had been a significant burst of marijuana trafficking in the northern Texas area during the late 70s.
Detective Wayne Carter was the lead officer assigned to the case. He's been gracious enough to sit down for an interview and shed light on the investigation.
We had tried to tighten our grip on the flow of drugs in the major cities, but it kept coming in. We honestly didn't have any particularly solid leads on where it was coming from and so on, until one day, my partner and I were on our way back from chasing down a bum tip, and our cruiser had actually broken down just outside Cobbler Ranch. And the K-9 unit had an emergency earlier in the day, so we had one of the dogs in the back seat with us.
But while Carter was looking under his hood, his K-9 passenger started to act in a manner that may suggest they may need backup. Carter and his team would eventually conduct a sweep of the ranch, finding approximately 187 pounds of marijuana, the largest acquisition of a controlled substance in the state of Texas to that point.
I know it may sound like we had a slam dunk on our hands at the time, but forensics back then wasn't nearly as advanced as it was nowadays, and Dex's legal team was the absolute best that money could buy. It at first seemed like the case was dead, but eventually, Dex became too busy trying to compensate his lawyers, and that left those who were especially close to him without a paycheck.
The next subject has elected to remain anonymous due to the sensitive information she or he disclosed.
I personally witnessed Dex Cobbler oversee the sale of marijuana on most of his properties. It seemed harmless at first, but then Dex got out of control.
Our source, the one who actually ratted Dex out, had managed to sneak a recording device into the room with him, and this recording is what became the biggest final nail in Dex's coffin.
What the hell did they ask you? What did you say? I swear to God, if you even think about trying to put the slightest dent in this business that I alone built, you will suffer immensely. I can guarantee you that. I am the top supplier of marijuana in the whole goddamn state. You ain't nothing.
After that, I knew I had to go to the police. I had to sacrifice my identity, but I knew it was the right thing to do.
After over 40 years in prison, Dex Cobbler was released from jail in 2016. He was last seen at a small airport in Abilene, Texas, where he was spotted by civilians loading a plane with large duffel bags, presumably leaving the country. This sparked more controversy as media outlets speculated as to where Cobbler was going and what exactly he took with him. 3 years later, on an episode of the hit TV show In the Mix with Mick Mostes, Cobbler resurfaced with a disturbing proclamation. The following clip discusses the mysterious disappearance, only to be interrupted by Cobbler himself.
Welcome back to another episode of In the Mix. I'm your host, Mick Mostes, and I don't mean to boast, but we have a great show for you today. Tonight's focus is about the mysterious disappearance of one of the most controversial modern figures, Dex Cobbler. Once a revered equine enthusiast, he experienced an infamous downfall amid drug peddling charges and was incarcerated for 25 years. Cobbler was recently spotted at an airport carrying duffel bags and presumably heading out of the country. This has stirred up a lot of discussion across the country, as there's still much speculation as to Cobbler's true involvement during the original trial. Joining me today are Dr. Riverswim of the University of Wautsumata in Langston-Langford, Chairman of Conservacorp and co-chair of Pump and Dump Oil. Gentlemen, due to the speculations from 25 years ago, do you feel that it is possible that Mr. Dex Cobbler was innocent of all charges all along?
Thank you for having me, Mick.
Dex Cobbler is a filthy sex and drugs criminal. His presence among the living world is downright abhorrent, and whoever says otherwise, especially my opponent, is a liar and a whore. There's only one thing worse than common bastards, and it's that slut Mary Jane.
I'd like to reiterate, precisely 0 sex charges were filed in the case. And I'm confused as to the direction of that claim, but thank you, Chairman Langford. Doctor?
All we know is that several hundred pounds of marijuana were found on his property and in a few company vehicles. But we're all forgetting the real perpetrators, Cobbler's most trusted employees who sold the derp herb. The only reason Dex faced such hard charges was due to their disappearance following the raid.
Oh, here we go again. He had no idea the real bad guy split and left him out to dry. Langston, stop calling this late or I'm calling the police. Poppycock and Boulder Dash Riverswim, no decent head of an organization is unaware of bricks of marijuana within the confines of their properties. So either he's a delinquent or a dunce. Such lack of oversight among employees inherently despicable.
Pardon the interruption, Chairman Langford, but didn't Pump and Dump Oil just file a multi-million-dollar settlement as a result of a rig fire among a short-staffed crew?
I'm sorry, Mick. Did you want to back to work this morning? Don't be such a baby and realize that the American way doesn't function without rig fires. And besides, there were no casualties and surgeons were able to reconstruct the employee's face with contributions from an elephant hide I had lying about. The point of today is to decide that both marijuana and Dex Cobbler are dangers to society. Someone could get hurt.
Dex Cobbler stands about as much a threat to society as Chris Christie does to a salad bar. The bottom line is an innocent man already served an unjust sentence for unwittingly housing a plant that just plain and simple isn't that bad, man. If anything, it's launched a lot of ska bands' careers, and you know they gotta eat too. The fact that a man who seemed to have no idea of his crime served so long a term is almost as bad as when they made Goku a frat guy. It's just not kosher, man. And I cannot, as a doctorate of positive emotional vibrations from Wautsumata U, condone the continued disturbance of Dex's life.
Oh, boo-hoo in a size 7 shoe. You expect me to believe that a grown man was unaware of exactly 187 bricks placed all about his property? They supplied the Texas leg of Willie Nelson's tours until 1978.
It appears you're unaware to inside voices or breath mints, so yeah, I could buy he might have been a little complacent.
You take that back, you dirty hippie, or your heart's not the only thing that's gonna be bleeding after I'm done with you.
Oh, I'll hit you like a water pipe, Red Star.
Okay. Good. Howdy. I'm so sorry to interrupt your normally scheduled program. My name is Dexter Artemis Cobbler, and I have a very special announcement to make. You've probably heard many a tall tale as to myself or my practices or my businesses, but let me set one thing straight. In 1978, the United States government found 187 pounds of marijuana on the premises of a horse ranch that I happened to proprietate. I tried to tell the officers, well, officer, I don't know anything about that, but they weren't having it. They had a mass amount of a stage 1 narcotic,
and they wanted a body in prison. It's kind of funny when you look at it. Some hillbilly gets a bunch of his weed found on his ranch and gets slapped with a year sentence. It really is kind of a hoot when you look at it objectively. But, it's not funny. I did some digging. And as of the year 2019, of the over 2 million Americans incarcerated in the prison system today, 250,000 of them sit in cages with criminals for non-violent drug offenses due to mandatory minimum sentences. Now, do you... Damn it, get back up here. Okay, are we working? Good. Now, as I was saying, do you think putting someone who simply abused a compound of chemicals in a cage with someone who thieves, rapes, or murders is appropriate or even somewhat justice? Now that just ain't right there, partner. And I know what you're thinking, and frankly, I know what the worst of you are thinking. You're thinking, oh, Rex, that can't happen to me. My life is full of privilege, and I've gotten by just fine in our society. Well, let me tell you something there, partner. You can be knee-deep in hoe-down, throw-down hose and have the best goddamn cutting horse in the nation in one of your stables, and Johnny Law will find a way to mess that up. All it takes is the mass amount of one wrong plant and some nosy fucking dog. Come on. Alrighty. I'm almost there. If I leave you with anything, let me leave you with this. Do not take your government or your laws at face value. Do not operate amicably in an unjust society. And finally, do not sit idly by while your brothers and sisters are held down and diminished in some industrial calm that simply marks them down as a statistic in a cruel system. It's not fair and it's not American. Now, I think I'm violating my probation right now, so I gotta be getting on to higher ground. Dex says goodbye.
Following the premiere of this episode, Cobbler's breach of the station's security was never accurately traced back to the source. This stunt alone landed Cobbler 5th on the FBI's most wanted list. To this day, Cobbler is still at large, but all trails of his whereabouts have gone cold. Investigators had done a composite sketch to indicate what Cobbler may look like today. If you have any information as to Cobbler's current location or activities, please call the number on the screen and we will notify the proper authorities. It's because of viewers like you that we are able to bring justice to so many people. I'm Marcus Cronauer, and this is Still at Large. Thank you and good night.